Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back, your lovely faces, to another video here on the Horror Channel. Yesterday we went over that Netflix has recently bought the brand new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. We don't know how much they paid Legendary for it, but it kind of made me feel after after the video came out, I was looking into it a little bit more, and I was like, is direct-to streaming now classed as the new direct-to-DVD, which sometimes direct-to-DVD films are the worst films going. This is why they sent him to DVD, to try and make a little bit of profit, because they knew they would fail at the box office. With this one, there's been a couple of people who have gone around and said they've heard reviews of test screenings and everything else, and the test screenings are absolutely abysmal. And if that is true, Legendary probably just thought, we'll just get it out there and we'll just get it done, we'll sell it off to Netflix or Amazon or whatever. And obviously Netflix bought it because, well, now Netflix have bought it, have they bought the rights? Or have they just bought this one film? Because if they have bought the rights, they can just go on and be like, you know what? We got this now, we can do what we want. We can make as many of these as we can. But this is what I came across on Bloody Disgusting, which was actually quite, it's a very interesting read. Leatherface on Netflix, why streaming could be an exciting new path for our favourite horror franchises. Surprise move that was announced at the start of this week, the upcoming Feder Alvarez produced Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a decades later sequel to Tobe Hooper's original, we've been told is not being released in theatres by Legendary as planned. Legendary normally go with either Universal or Warner Brothers. And maybe this should have gone to HBO Max, I don't know. They would have got a little bit more extra money, I think. So, the streaming service has picked up global rights to the franchise return, meaning Leatherface is headed to the small screen soon. Is it going to be Halloween time? I think it should, because that's when Paranormal Activity is actually having a brand new version of their film released to Paramount Plus around around Halloween time. Not Hollywood. Silly. So, directed by David Blue Garcia, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre will be the franchise's first film since 2017, with that year's Leatherface initially premiering exclusively on DirecTV, ahead of a limited theatrical rollout. What was once guaranteed theatrical franchise is now seemingly becoming quite comfortable with premiering at home, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is far from the only major horror franchise that's adapting to these streaming-heavy times. While almost everything going on in the movie industry right now can be considered pandemic-fueled, anomaly rather than the new normal, multiple big-time horror franchises are currently planning for streaming debuts in the months and years ahead. Next installment in the Evil Dead franchise, Lee Cronin's Evil Dead Rise, is expected to go straight to HBO Max sometime next year, while David Bruckner is directing a new Hellraiser movie for the Hulu streaming service. Then we have Paranormal Activity and Pet Sematary franchises coming back to life soon, both new movies being made for Paramount Plus. And let's not forget NBC Universal's Peacock, reportedly the future home of Rob Zombie's spin on classic TV series The Munsters. So first of all, with that, I really hope that Rob Zombie keeps it as a comedy, because that's what The Munsters is. We can't have his version of The Munsters where they've gone around and it's just balls-to-the-wall horror. But because of the actual IP and it is being The Munsters, I can see it being a little bit more comedy, a little bit more rock and roll, a bit more like his Dragula video, because obviously that is based on The Munsters. Alien and Chucky franchise, meanwhile, are spawning television shows for the very first time, further signalling a shift in the way we consume franchise horror entertainment. All of this begs the question, is streaming the future of our horror favourite franchises? And if so, is that something horror fans should be concerned about, or quite the opposite? When it was announced that Evil Dead Rise was going to HBO Max, many horror fans had the same reaction they had this week when Leatherface's impending return was announced. Understandably, many still view direct-to-streaming as a death knell for franchises. I do at this moment in time. As well as a bad sign when it comes to the studio faith in the project. But the days of direct-to-video being a dirty term are largely behind us here in 2021, even if horror fans will probably be forever wounded by franchises like Pumpkinhead, Return of the Living Dead, and Hellraiser, to name just a few, being completely killed off by low-budget direct-to-video sequels that were never able to even approach the quality of the theatrical offerings. With the Hellraiser series, it was Miramax and Dimension Films. Weinstein completely ruined them. Some of the scripts for them, they were amazing. If they had the budget, they would have been fantastic. But, we know exactly what Weinstein's like now. There was a time indeed when the franchise taking the direct-to-video approach all but ensured that it just wasn't a viable property anymore. But can that really be said at a time when some of the best horror movies in any given year are being released not in theatres, but at home? Direct-to-streaming, to be sure, is a whole different world than direct-to-video, and as the landscape continues to evolve, it's only natural that we're going to have to start looking at things in a different way. With the pandemic still raging in the United States and a large portion of the population refusing to get vaccinated, it makes all the sense in the world for a movie like Texas Chainsaw to forego a theatrical release right now, and for Legendary to instead sell the finished film off to Netflix for what is surely a hefty sum of money right out of the gate. Bad sign for the quality of the movie, you ask? Let's not forget about Fear Street Trilogy. Originally planned as a theatrical release, instead went direct to Netflix early this summer. Horror fans, by and large, ate it up with glee. Fear Street Trilogy is absolutely amazing. But what about the Cloverfield Paradox? That was an abysmal movie. While one could argue that horror icons like Freddy, Jason and Leatherface belong nowhere but on the big screen, which is true, the reality is that most of them have been found up there in a very long time. Horror movie remake boom in the 2000s, so many of our favourite franchises returned to the big screen. Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine 3D that was, Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw. The goal with any remake is to generate not just one profitable movie but a string of them. But studios have had a whole lot of trouble with that latter goal over the years. Both the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street remakes were indeed profitable back in 2009 and 2010, but neither franchise has been seen or heard from since. With that one though, Nightmare on Elm Street the remake, I did not like it one bit. It had a couple of good little ideas, but the way they went about it, and Jackie Earl Haley, he is a good actor. He is a good actor. I liked him in Watchmen, and I liked him in RoboCop as well. But that man is no Freddy Krueger. Everyone knows Freddy Krueger is Robert Englund. If Robert can, he can do it, because obviously he is getting on now, but he still does appearances as Freddy Krueger, and he still has it. But he has come out and said himself that if anyone's going to take over as Freddy Krueger, Kevin Bacon should do it. If you've seen the film Hollow Man, you'll know what I'm talking about. He would be brilliant. Friday franchise's hands are tied due to the messy legal issue. It's also there that many years in the wake of the 2009 remake, where sequels could have got off the ground, but never did. Yeah, it's not a bad film either, the 2009 remake. A far cry from the franchise past, to say the least, when new sequels were being released every single year. Yeah, Friday the 13th was basically the Saw and Paranormal Activity of the 80s. So what's going on there, and how can streaming blaze a new path for franchises that aren't exactly lighting up the box office on a regular basis like they used to? Studios often have to spend a lot of money to make a lot of money at the box office, and it seems they often just don't have much interest in spending a lot of money on the horror franchises that has proven quite successful for them in the past. Aside from the Halloween franchise, most of the big ones have been lying dormant in recent years, or at the very least have changed hands and direction so many times, it's hard to even consider them cohesive franchises anymore. I'm looking at you, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, now on your third direct sequel to the original classic, in the wake of a remake and two different prequels. The days of the horror franchise Part 7s and Part 8s seem to be largely behind us, with studios constantly having to hit the refresh and reboot button to continue pulling in new audiences, and since it's their ultimate goal and all, turn a profit with these properties. Streaming may open another door entirely for the franchise like Texas Chainsaw, allowing new movies to be released at a steady clip, free of the risk of the huge production budgets and marketing spends inherently to theatrical releases. Surely 20th Century is wishing they didn't spend well over $100 million on The Predator just a few years ago, but perhaps lessons can be learned from this endless cycle of too much money, not enough profit. And it does go on to say about, obviously, Nightmare on Elm Street. It's impossible to imagine that franchise being brought back to the big screen and being profitable. It's saying about Child's Play as well, taking in the wake of big screen release Seed of Chucky has been something special. If you're asking me, what Don Mancini has been doing with his pint-sized creation is a blueprint that other horror franchises should be studying. Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, now upcoming Chucky TV series. Yeah, to be honest with you, these have been absolutely amazing films. They have gone back to what made Chucky scary in the beginning. They're just so much fun to watch as well. The kills are amazing. But obviously it says about only be allowed in a direct-to-video, direct-to-streaming arena these days, making the Chucky franchise the rare property that's still operating the way horror franchises used to. Chucky's return to the big screen meanwhile, wasn't profitable enough to warrant a follow-up movie anytime soon. And Nick doesn't say about Pet Sematary, Killer Clowns maybe returning in any other form other than streaming, but it's going to be interesting to see how this actually pans out, because horror franchises in the 90s and let's say early 2000s, they were everywhere. I was born in 1986, and even I remember in the early 90s, I was seeing posters for Hellraiser 3 and all these other ones, and I'm like, what are these like, and that started my trip on horror. But that's what we got today, guys, and let me know your thoughts and comments below. Are you happy that Texas Chainsaw is going straight to streaming, or are the leaks actually true and saying the film is absolutely abysmal, and they just wanted to get rid of it, but they wanted to make a bit of a profit? If you are new to the channel, please subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you all in the fog.